Oh, thank you. Many species of marine mammals are known to jump out of the water and crash back into the water on their backs. It's called breaching. You ever seen a whale do this? I got a video of it. Set to some very dramatic music. Here we go. See? Normally when you see it, you don't have the dramatic music, but it's still pretty cool. Nobody knows why they do that. Maybe for removing parasites, a warning signal, to avoid suitors, or to have fun.
How would they remove parasites?
I don't know, maybe they got something on their back and they want to get rid of it. They can't scratch their back. So they jump up in the water and crash down on it. So the name of that is breaching. There's a lot of pod behavior has been studied. Members of a pod will come to help an injured individual. Sometimes a pod has been seen carrying along an injured individual that can't swim for some reason. So they help one another out, kind of like people would do. Many whales stick their heads out of the water to see their surroundings. Often you'll see a whale, especially dolphins and porpoises, will stick their head up and look around, up above the water, to try and find their way around or seeing something. So that's another behavior. Dolphins will carry an injured individual to the surface to breathe. Remember, these organisms have to breathe air. They don't have gills. That's a common thought among students, is that dolphins and whales have gills. So if something happens to them and they can't swim, they'll drown. And the other animals know this. They're smart enough to know that they have to go up to breathe, and so they'll carry them up. And so you see all kinds of behaviors like this. Spying is what they call it, when the whales stick their head out of the water. That's called spying. So here it shows, these are a bunch of whales coming to tend to an injured individual. This is the spying behavior, and this is the helping the injured individual up from the bottom. And so this is all seen. You know, a lot of the research from whales comes now from these big aquariums where they keep whales. Watch them for long periods of time. Have cameras on them and stuff. One mystery of cetacean behavior is stranding or beaching. This is when a whale comes up onto the beach. And usually it's not because they're washed up there, but that could happen in a really big storm. But usually they'll swim up onto the beach and get stuck. And there's a lot of reasons for it. Efforts to move them back into the ocean usually don't work. They'll either die or beach themselves again. One of the things about about a whale's body is it's not adapted for being on the land. They don't have the muscles to hold themselves up when they're on the land. They need the buoyancy of the water to support their body. So when they're up on the beach, the size of their body is basically squashing down because of the gravity, and they don't have the buoyancy to hold them up. And they can't breathe is what ends up happening. They need the buoyancy of the water to be able to move air in and out. And so it's often they're kind of doomed when they get up on the beach like that. And if they try to move them back in the water, they'll usually just beach themselves again, or they might already be so injured that they die anyway. They think that the beaching is sometimes caused by Navy sonar. Y'all know what sonar is that ships use? You may have seen like a war movie or something where you hear this, there's a submarine and you hear this doing, doing, doing. You know what I'm talking about? And what that is a sonar. It's ships will send out a sound wave that hits things. It's just like echolocation. It's a sound wave that hits something, and then the sound wave comes back to the ship, and the ship has sensors, and it can measure how long it took the sound wave to go there and come back. And it can kind of draw a picture of what's around the ship in the ocean because based on the sound waves that come back. And so fishermen use this all the time. You got a fish finder on your boat? So it sends out sound waves and draws a picture of the bottom, and if there's fish between you and the bottom, the sound waves will ping off the fish, and you can see the fish on your fish finder. And that's an actually audible tone. If you're underwater, you can hear it. And for some ships, it's real loud. And they think that sonar can damage the ears of whales, even if they're kind of a long ways off from the ship. Because whales have very sensitive ears for their own echolocation, you see. More sensitive than many of the sea creatures that don't use echolocation. So that's one reason. So if you damage your ears, you get dizzy. That happens with us too. Anytime, if you ever wake up dizzy, one time I woke up real dizzy. I had vertigo. You ever heard of that? Mm-hmm. And it's because the little stones in my ears were out of whack, in my inner ears. And it goes away after a while and they get reset. But if this happens to a whale, they get ear damage, then they get dizzy and they can't find their way and they'll beach themselves, you see. And then often there are individuals following their leader. There's a leader of the pod and other individuals follow him or her. I don't know if they're male or female, but if the whale beaches itself and it's got everybody else following them, the whole group of them will beach themselves. Somehow they don't know any better. And so you can end up with giant groups of whales all beached. You can see there, look at all of them. And here they're trying to help one back. That's an old drawing of a big beached whale. Stranded whale video. Or not.
They are one of nature's greatest nomads, travelling thousands of miles a year. But now a huge pod of dozens of pilot whales have become beached on New Zealand's Farewell Spit. Around 100 animals were trapped in low tide, sparking a desperate rescue effort to dig, float or lever the creatures back into the water. One ingenious idea was to float one whale and use it as bait to lure the others out, as pilot whales will often follow one leader. But on Tuesday, more than 39 whales who had been freed managed to re-beach themselves.
Good, we're all as good as red, sweetie.
Up to 34 are already believed to have died. Farewell Spit is one of the most common beaching sites in the world. This is the third, but by far the largest, within 3 months.
Huh. Kind of sad. So they don't really know why they do this completely. But it happens. Many marine mammals are known for their long migrations. The longest migration is that of the gray whale, over 11,000 miles. They show the migrations in your book that some of the whales do on page 206. Whales, if you're wondering how far they can go, about 115 miles a day. That's like an all-day bike ride. $115 miles. That's like from here to Statesboro. May use the Earth's magnetic field to navigate or visual landmarks. We're pretty sure these organisms can feel or see or something to that extent where north is. Because the Earth has a magnetic field, they have a built-in compass in their head, you see. And we're not sure how they know, but some research shows that they might have some connections to their eyes from the part of the brain that can sense north. And so they may be able to see north, see where the North Pole, the North Magnetic Pole is, and maybe that appears to them as kind of a lighter area or a darker area, and they know to go toward the light at a certain time of year or away from the light at a certain time of year. They're not exactly sure how they do this, but those are just some guesses. But they also know that they use visual landmarks, like under the ocean. There's, a coral reef that they recognize, and they say, okay, I know when I get to the coral reef, I got to turn right a little bit, and then that'll get me to the right spot. And they just learn this from their parents, and then they teach it to their kids, and so it's knowledge that's just passed on. You learn where to go, and after you do that every year for many years, then you know the route too. It's just like the same way we find places. After you do it a few times, and you know it, and then you can do it on your own. And so they do these huge migrations. Why do they migrate? Well, some places, sometimes they'll go to certain places to mate, or sometimes they'll go to certain places for food, and to have their babies. When you have your baby, the baby has to eat a lot to be able to survive and grow, and so you got to have your kids in places that have a lot of food. And at some times of the year, there's a lot of food in the southern hemisphere, and another time of the year, there's a lot of food in the northern hemisphere, and so they go back and forth, and that makes for these long migrations. And so the humpback whales, you can see they go from up here in the Arctic in the summer, that's where the food is. And then they migrate to various locations in the winter. Those little dots. And then the gray whales, too, go from the pink area you see here to, and they're up here in the summer, and they're down here in the winter. And so maybe those are the whales that we're spotting off the coast of California there when we're whale watching. I don't know. But you can see some of these are very long migrations. That's a long way to travel. I mean, from one side of the United States to the other is 3,000 miles. So you can see that arrow right there. That's a long way. And the same thing happens in the southern hemisphere. They're usually near the poles in the summer, and then it gets too cold there, so they go near the equator in the winter. Hawaii, there's another good whale spotting area. These humpback whales come in there. This ought to be colored in white. Is it colored in white in your book?
Mm-mm.
See how they have it white on the chart here? That ought to be white. Call the editor. All right, so the last part of the reading talks about mammal sex. Your favorite part. All marine mammals have internal fertilization. That means the male inserts the sperm into the body of the female. It's not like fish, where they spawn into the water. It's internal fertilization, just like people do it. And this is probably because they evolved from organisms that run around on land. And so they do it the way land animals do it. Pinnipeds have their copulation, that's the scientific word. Pinnipeds do it on the land. And the males, do y'all know what pinnipeds are? Seals, sea lions. The males compete for harems. So a male sea lion will have a harem of maybe 6 or 8 female sea lions. And he'll get to mate with all of them, you see. And then what will happen is other males will come challenge him for his harem. And then the sea lions will have the males will have big fights with one another. I saw one of those fights when I was on the Galapagos, and I got it on film. I'll show it to you in just a second. Some marine mammals use delayed implantation of the fetus. This allows the calf to be born at a time that is best for the survival of the calf. Delayed implantation. What that means is the male has sex with the female. She gets pregnant. I mean, she gets her egg fertilized by the sperm. But she doesn't allow the zygote to implant in her uterus and start developing until the right time. So that's called delayed implantation of the fetus. And so she can just wait for, I don't know how long, weeks or months, and then when she gets to the right place and the right time, she'll let the zygote implant, and then it'll grow into a baby, and she'll have the baby. But you want your babies born at a time when there's plenty of food around. You don't want your babies born, when they won't have anything to eat, so they've evolved this delayed implantation. I don't know. I don't know how they do it. It's a good question. Their bodies somehow have evolved to be able to hold off. Could be some enzymes or something that react when the temperature gets right or something like that. So probably some hormones maybe sent out by the brain that cause the zygote to suddenly undergo mitosis or some other mechanism for implantation only when the conditions are right. Some cellular mechanisms that I don't know about. Since they're mammals, they all give milk to their young. This is the baby feeding off the mother. They have nipples and make milk, and the baby feeds off the milk. So the mother, she just has to eat. And her body will take some of the food that she eats and make milk out of it. And so the baby doesn't have to catch food on its own. The mother catches the food and the baby drinks the milk. Then when the baby gets big enough, the baby will have to catch its own food.
Does the harem thing only happen with pinnipeds?
Right. And here's a big harem. I guess here's another one over here. I'll show you one here. See if... Okay, this is a sea lion harem that we're around. These are all females. Little bird running around. You can see a bunch of them in the back there. Usually maybe 10 females or so laying around. There's a bunch of iguanas too. Okay, this is a male. Okay, so this is a male that has come to challenge the dominant male. I think this is the dominant male, and this is the challenger. Or it might be vice versa. And the dominant male is going to run off the challenger here. And all these other ones are females that they're fighting over. The male is, here's the dominant male, see, he's running this guy off.
Bachelor Colony, you're voted off yet.
Right now, chase it again. And then back to the water. He chases him off. Sometimes they'll actually fight. And he'll swim after him until he gets far enough away. And so what that challenger male will do will go eat more and get bigger. And when he gets big enough, he'll come back and challenge again.
Oh yeah. See him out there.
Yeah.
Our guide is telling us all of this.
inside the water, and the water wants to get outside.
I'm too focused on the iguanas to really care about anything else. So anyway, sea lion harems. So that's what the males do. The males have a little colony of their own, a little island of their own. It's called a bachelor colony. And they hang out there and they just eat all day and kind of rest and get big. And when they feel they're big enough, they'll go challenge for a harem somewhere. And so the owner of the harem is constantly fighting off challengers all day long. And will be working out a lot doing that, and so will lose weight, you see, as he's fighting off challengers. And eventually he'll get too small, and the challengers will get bigger because they're just sitting around doing nothing. And then they'll be able to take over the harem. And so it just constantly works like that. They're just changing who owns the harem. So the male that owns the harem will own that harem for maybe a year, and then he'll lose the challenge and have to leave. So you mate as much as you can in a year while you have your harem. This just shows some of the mating behavior of whales. They have all sorts of swims they do, and they hug each other, and some of the mating behavior has been filmed and studied. Gestation time varies in marine mammals, normally 11 to 12 months in cetaceans. That means they're pregnant for 11 or 12 months. Calves are born tail first, so they can remain attached to the placenta until the entire body is out, and the animal can be forced to the water's surface to take its first breath. So, as soon as they're born, they have to breathe, and they have like an umbilical cord, just like we do, that's attached to the placenta, and they can get blood goes through the umbilical cord, and oxygen comes with the blood. But after they're born, that umbilical cord breaks off, and then they're getting no oxygen, so they have to surface. And then the baby swims up and takes its first breath. And it just knows how to do this. It's born with that knowledge. It doesn't have to learn to go up and take a breath. That behavior is programmed in, so it just automatically does it. I have video footage. Would you like to see? Oh, there's a picture of a baby coming out. They took this out of an aquarium.
Say hello to the new arrival at the Vancouver Aquarium. It's a beautiful, brilliant, bouncing baby beluga being born bodatedly, and some other things beginning with B. Keela gave birth to her first calf yesterday, and it looks like they're having a whale of a time. Sorry, but you can't have a beluga report without a whale of a time comment. Now here's the stats. The newborn is about 1.5 metres long and weighs more than 50 kilograms. Keela herself was born at the aquarium in 1995, but this is her first calf, and like any new mammal mummy, she's learning how to care for her baby.
That's a beluga, like at the Atlanta Aquarium. We need to do a field trip to the Atlanta Aquarium. So this is kind of a table on the last page of the chapter showing all the different creatures we learned about here, this chapter, and kind of all their features and such. It's kind of a nice little cheat sheet to a lot of information. It might help you learn the stuff if you go over all that. I have one final video I want to show about dolphin intelligence. And so make sure you finish reading the chapter. And remember, tomorrow is marine biography. Okay? And I'll schedule the trip. You can turn that off now.